In this video, we will talk a bit about normal. So, who is normal? We know that 15% of the global population live with some kind of disability. This percent will be tripled by 2030 if we include the non-communicable diseases. So, healthcare conditions that cannot be transmitted, like from allergies to mental health, obesity, cardiovascular conditions, and so on. At the moment, 77% of people living in European region live with some kind of non-communicable disease, 44% in Canada and 45% in the US. So who is actually the healthy, normal person? The references of all these numbers in my blog post that you can find the link in the description of the video, called A Real Person Living in a World Designed for Unicorns. Here we can see two statues. These two statues are created based on the average of the measurements of people in a specific place in the United States. After they created the statues, they decided to do a competition to find this perfect man or woman who will fit with the measurements of the statues. So they moved on having a competition for these perfect people, and they end up realizing that there aren't any. The winners were the ones who were closer to these measurements that the statues had. You can find more details on these two statues, that their names are Norm and Norma, in the link in the description. Let's hear Jonathan Mooney to talk about normal.
That normal hasn't always been normal. It has a history, not of discovery, but invention. The word normal did not enter the English language until the 1860s. It was used historically first only within the academic discipline of geometry. It meant to be at a right angle, which is interesting because to be at a right angle implies that that's something that is good and right and true. Normal really came on the scene during the rise of industrialization and standardization. So there's a Belgian statistician named Courtelet who became obsessed with taking statistics and applying averages to human affairs. That's what starts to dominate our places of work, dominate our schools, dominates our view of the world. Normal is a suburban, white, straight, able-bodied dude with 2.5 children. And that 2.5 gives you the insight into how that is a statistical abstraction that cannot exist in the world.
Look at David, how straight he stands, with his glossy hair, his good color, his broad chest, beautiful feet with small ankle bones and fine arches.
Kids who end up on the wrong side of normal in school.
The case of Bob.
He's a disturbing element, frequently clowning and talking out of turn.
They find themselves with something called an individualized education plan. It's a file.
He's an unhappy child and is avoided by other children.
A surveillance file.
He insists on helping with the housework and with the cooking. He plays only with little girls because he says boys' games are too rough.
Immature. Psychoneurosis with conduct disorder. Fearful. Mixed psychoneurosis with depression. Stutters. Disruptive. Gifted but destructive and provocative. Possible organ
spelling,
neurosis.
executive
Diagnosis
functioning
of severe
deficits, organizational challenges, speech problems.
So this was Jonathan Mooney talking about normal. And what we perceived as normal dominates the way that we think. Even in fields like medical science, that we think that everything is black and white is not like that. For example, the sex is not as binary as we think. It became binary just because we decided that we will base our sex based on our genitalia. But sex has a lot of different variables that need to be combined in order to become a female or a male. However, because of these social norms and because of the perception of medicine in the different ages, people decided that the female and the male will be described based on the genitalia. Another subject related to medicine is homosexuality. Until pretty recently, homosexuality was a mental health condition, while today it isn't. So things change, and what is normal changes, and it dictates the way that we think. So if I talk about a letter to you, you will have an image in your head of what a letter is based on where you grew up. Most people in the West world will think a letter as the pictures below. However, a letter can take a completely different form. This is a picture from the Museum of Culture in Gothenburg, and this is a letter from the Native American Pachacuti. So this letter can be read also by people with low vision. It is composed from nodes, as you can see in the magnification of the picture. And it's a completely different form than the one that we have used. Able woman and disabled man. Here we will see two cases of usage of a Xerox printer. The one can actually use this piece of technology. However, the advertisement somehow implies that women cannot do much. It's the advertisement, I think it's from 60s. And the reason that I picked specifically to be a woman in one place and men in the other is because the most known example of people who were perceived as incapable of voting, unable to be self-sufficient, were women. And slowly women start fighting for the rights to vote, the rights to be equal. And sometimes even today, some people use women's physiology to pass their agenda and promote that women are incapable of doing things, which could easily go towards disability since they are unable to be self-sustained. You can see a video of a Polish European Parliament member that happened in 2017, arguing that since women have smaller brain than men, should get paid less. So let's see here, the little woman, as oftentimes were described in advertisements in the 60s, how she can use a printer.
I can't type. I don't take dictation. I won't sharpen pencil. I can't file. My boss calls me indispensable.
Miss Jones,
Just a minute.
will you make a copy of this?
Naturally. I push the button on the Xerox 914. I make perfect copies of whatever my boss needs by just turning a knob and pushing a button. Anything he can see, I can copy in black and white on ordinary paper. And am I fast? I can make 7 copies in a minute. By the way, I never need wet chemicals. My 914 is a dry machine, powder dry. Sometimes my boss asks me which is the original, and sometimes I don't know. Here, Mr. Smith, I'm going to lunch with Mother.
So we can see here that this machine is so easy to use that even a woman can use it. And when we talk about accessibility and universal design that you may have heard, we talk about everything, not only people with disabilities or people older in age, but also people of different cultures and languages, and of course people of different sexes or genders. Here we can see 2 males using a similar machine.
Now, here, I'm going to just do this. Place 1 to 50 originals, but wait a minute, I have 100 originals. Face up. Place all originals against the left wall. We want two-sided copies. Unload top paper tray. Now, do we want them collated? What? Reverse order the originals? You gotta be kidding. This is definitely a bug. Press start.
Does that relate to that?
Unload top paper
We didn't do
tray.
that. That's not this. That's not the paper tray. It doesn't say what the paper tray is, huh?
Unload top.
Did you reset?
Oh, shit. So now,
You just started it all over again, so it doesn't remember that it's doing this on the other side or anything, huh? Maybe it just knows it anyway. So our first batch
our first,
is SOL.
what is that?
Shit out of it.
I knew it was going to be something clever like that.
I learned that when I was here.
So in general, it is easy for people to understand the differences between women and men and the struggle of women for equality without perceiving women as people with disabilities. It can be someone who just have a different experience of life. A similar struggle with women had people with hearing loss, deaf people, where they speak sign. Here is one of people who are working in the deaf space, a university in the United States for deaf people, presenting themselves.
How do you see deaf people in the first place? So we got to work you out of that way of seeing us. If you have seen deaf people merely as objects of pity, that people with disabilities, oh, poor folks can't hear the birds sing or the music. Well, if that's the place you're working from, then we got to work you out of that space initially so that you can see that's not the way we see our lives.
So as you can see, oftentimes deaf people see themselves as just speaking a different language. So when we talk about accessibility, again, it's not only about the skills that we miss, it's also about the skills that we gain and the experience of life that we have based on our own body and mind. In this case, these people speak sign. The question is, would you consider a Spanish-speaking person or a Greek-speaking person visiting an English-speaking country without knowing the English language as a person with disability or as a person with a different culture, that this society doesn't provide another language as an accessible language for the administration or any other work that you will need to do in the English-speaking country? Oftentimes in my lectures I use this picture and I'm asking who is the problematic here. Is it that the user is too short to reach the ATM, or is it that the ATM is too high for this particular person? Is the disability inherent to the person, or we create people with disabilities due to our designs? So for example, this person who cannot reach the ATM could have an accident while trying to withdraw money. Who is responsible for this accident, and who will be responsible for his inability to being self-sufficient in the future after an accident that happened because of this ATM? So there are different models of disabilities. Here are 3 of them. You can find in the link in the description even more models of disability. But here are the most common. The moral model of disability, which supports that you or your parents have done something bad in the past and now you have been punished by having a disability or a disease. The medical model of the disability, which views disability as a problem of the person and it needs to be fixed, so this person can function in the society, and the social model of disability that perceive disability as an external factor, that it comes from the design of the society and how we have created society and what people we decided to include into the society. The World Health Organization supports that disability refers to the interaction between individuals with a health condition and personal and environmental factors. You can find the reference for this in the description. This video was a little bit longer and it had notions challenging the notion of normal, and it's nice if you can take some time to think, what did you find interesting from this part of the presentation, what did you have hard time to perceive, and why do you think you have hard time to perceive it.